Okay, so there's an overarching theme that I want everyone to take to heart this year, and really for beyond this year. And what I want you to work on is, I want you to take a look at yourself and find out what area can you be 1% better in each day. So the way to become 1% better at something is to take an approach that is purposeful and intentional. And so when it comes to real estate, what areas can you be more purposeful and intentional in? Even if you don't have any clients that you're currently working with now, what can you do to become better? Well, today we're going to talk about one topic that I think is incredibly important to every agent's success, and that is neuro-linguistic programming, or otherwise known as NLP. When someone is talking to you, the words they say don't matter as much as two other things. There's actually, scientists have discovered that our brains interpret language and communication in this way. 7% of what our communication involves are the words that we use. 38% is the tone that we have, and the remaining 55% is what, do you think? I'm asking. Words, tone, and
body language.
That's it. Now, if you're on the phone with somebody and they can't see your body language, where does that 55% go into?
Your tone.
Tone. That's right. So we're going to talk today about the importance of tone, and I'm going to take you through a couple of things that you can definitely start to exercise right away. So it's not about what you say, it's how you say it. The reason that I am so successful when talking with clients is because of my tone. You all know that I have a very confident, cool, commanding tone when I'm talking to someone. It's just another Tuesday, it's no big deal, this is just a regular day in the office. That is huge when you're talking to someone that doesn't know you, because that's really what they're getting from you. Now, building rapport with a client is very simple. However, a lot of people mess it up because they try too hard. I want to go over today something that's very important with neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming is basically a science of communication. It's how you say it, what you say, and the body language. We're going to talk about active listening. Active listening, we've all heard active listening before, but I'm going to break active listening down into 6 subcategories, or 6 components of active listening, and we can control these things and we can focus on these things. The first component of active listening is honesty. And what I mean by that is that you are actually listening. You are giving eye contact if you are in front of somebody. Have you ever been talking to someone and mid-conversation they start to kind of gaze off to the side? That's not active listening. That's not honest listening. Like, do you believe that person is honestly listening to you? So that's the first component. Make sure your eye contact is very good if you're in person. Secondly, you want to remain emotionally neutral. Here's an example of being emotionally neutral. So, Elgin, you have a client that says, I'm getting divorced. What do you say?
So sorry to hear that. How can I be of service?
Yep, so that's good. That's half of that is good. You don't say, I'm so sorry to hear that, because that is taking a stance. That's not emotionally neutral. So instead you say something like, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. That is neutral. Because what if they're happy about it? What if they're the ones that wanted the divorce and they're super happy? And so, I've seen people do the double answer where it's, should I feel sorry for you or should I congratulate you? And they kind of address the elephant in the room and kind of make it a little bit more lighthearted. But that's one example. You don't want to necessarily color their situation because you could be biased. They could be the best thing that's ever happened. They could have been waiting 20 years for the guts to divorce, and now they've finally done it. And so you understand. Thank you for letting me know. Next part of active listening is having no agenda. An agenda is having a question in mind while the other person's talking. That's an agenda. You're not allowing yourself to receive the information they're telling you. Of course, when you start a conversation with someone, you have a broad agenda of what you'd like to accomplish, but you don't have a bias one way or the other. You're going to let the conversation guide what happens next. So that is very important. Next is context. You're driving the conversation by the context. So you don't want to bounce around from topic to topic when they're explaining something. The best way you can show active listening is to continue to ask questions. You don't know where you're going to end up. So you're going to start the conversation up here. And you're going to ask a question. And that question may have 2 answers. It may have more than 2 answers. Then the next question you asked, you shouldn't know until you have the answer to the first question. And so every question unlocks another series of questions. And so that is how you naturally kind of guide the conversation, is asking questions. Now, this last part, I want you to put a star next to. Listen, don't relate. Here's the secret to building rapport. Building rapport is not trying to identify all the things you have in common. The person you're talking to doesn't care if you like the same schools, doesn't care if you like the same band, doesn't care if you drive the same car. That's not how you build rapport. Rapport is built, the secret to rapport being built, if you want someone to feel like they've built rapport with you, is that they feel heard. That's how they feel rapport. I promise you, if you go to a party and you get the person you're talking to you haven't met, if you get them to talk about themselves, 95% of the conversation, they're going to leave that party thinking that you guys are best friends, that you've built rapport. They don't know anything about you, but by sharing them about themselves and you asking questions about them, you're automatically validating them and automatically building rapport. So don't try to relate. It can be seen as kind of desperate. So we've all been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it. I was in a house this morning for a listing presentation or a meet and greet. And there was all kinds of Disney stuff on the walls. Oh, Disney, you guys are fans of Disney, that's cool. Instead of saying me too, and then us talking about our favorite rides, I just said, how often do you go? What's your favorite park? I just started asking them questions about themselves, right? Because I'm naturally curious and I want, I'm just making conversation. But asking questions that don't seem like like you're interrogating them. And if you ask questions based on their last response, it's not an interrogation. If you ask a series of questions that has no basis in their previous answer, it just sounds like you're going through the checklist, and you're not building rapport if you're going through a checklist. So, active listening is an art. I mean, there's a science to it, but it is an art. And it is a way for people to feel like they have a connection with you and build a rapport without you having to force anything. Even if you have nothing in common with this person, they're gonna feel like they have a closeness to you. And so don't force the relation, you know? Because again, people don't care about us, nor should they. We're there for them. And so this is very, very important. A couple other things I want to talk about, a couple of random points that you can start to think about and incorporate into your conversations. If you're in a conversation with someone, you should naturally try to mirror them. Now, I'm not telling you to do what my daughters do, which is copycat, and they just repeat each other until one of them pummels the other one. You're gonna naturally mirror somebody. So for example, I sit down at the table with Elgin. Elgin's a client. Look at how he's sitting. He's sitting back, he's relaxed, his arms crossed. So I'm gonna mirror his body language. If he's sitting like that and I'm like this, that doesn't make him feel comfortable. So you have to, without being obvious, and so like, I'm not gonna, every time he moves, I'm not gonna adjust when he adjusts. I'm not gonna copycat him, but I'm gonna mirror him. Have you ever talked to someone that was talking really fast and then you find yourself talking faster? That's normal. Your body, your brain does that. Your brain wants to naturally mirror. So you wanna make sure that you're paying attention to body language and you're paying attention to your body language. Mirroring is also going to build rapport in the mind of the person you're talking to. And so if you notice that they're talking slower than you are, then you might want to slow your questions down a little bit. You know, you don't want to be a chihuahua if you're dealing with a big, you know, like Great Dane who's just standing there. So you want to make sure that you're matching, you're mirroring. Matching energy is very important. That is the unspoken secret about sales. Sales is rapport, right? No one is going to work with you until they trust you. They'll trust you with matching energy. You guys may like the same bands and the same movies and Disney and all that kind of stuff, but that's not why someone's gonna work with you, is because, oh, they like Mickey Mouse too. You wanna ask them questions about themselves, and guess what? The other secret to life is not just sales. People like people that like them. So the easiest way to get someone to like you is to like them. The easiest way to show someone you like them is to take an interest in them and start asking a bunch of questions. And so that, you know, if they trust you and they like you, they're much more likely to work with you. And we haven't covered anything about a pitch, right? We're not pitching them anything. They don't care about our pitch. People only care about their own problems. That's great. We want to hear about their problems. We want to explore their problems. Now, next part of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, that I want to talk to you about is I want you to replace certain words from your vocabulary, right? So now we're going to talk about word choice for a second, which is only 7% of what we're talking about. But this 7% is still important because we can control it. Bad words. We should have a swear jar in this office. In fact, I might come up with that. If you use one of these words, then you put $1 in the jar. First word, budget. Gross, disgusting. We don't say budget. What do we say instead?
Price point?
Yes. Price point, price range. In the context of getting pre-approved, I love to use purchasing power.
We use payment range a lot.
Payment range, same as price range.
Same concept, but we focus on payment.
When you ask someone what their budget is, you're asking them to identify their limitations as a human, right? Like, how much are you worth? Right? How much money do you have? It's an off-putting question. It's an ugly question. The word budget usually makes people freak out. I don't like when people ask me what my budget is, because my budget doesn't matter. It's all about value and what I want to pay for something, not necessarily how much money I have. So, when I talk to someone that's a buyer, what price point have you been looking at? That puts the buyer fully in control. So this is not saying what are you worth, this is saying what have you been looking at? So they're the ones that are choosing. They're not saying, well, this is all I'm worth. You're giving them a position to be like, well, this is the price point we're looking at. I don't care, and nor should you, what their price point is. This also should never be the first question that you ask. If you ask this as the first question, you're dead, because that has told the prospect that that's all you care about. So this is a very important question, but this is the last question, right? Because you want them talking about themselves and their situation and what they like, what they're looking for, what areas. Then we talk price point. And if they've told you that they want a 6-bedroom home with a pool in a gated neighborhood, and then we talk budget and it's $250, okay, all right, well, you know, that's when you have a conversation about price. But then you've had enough rapport building that you can go back and say, okay, I don't know that you're going to necessarily find what you're looking for in this price point. Are you open to other price points? All right, so that's the first. I mean, that's really the. Let's just focus on this one bad word, right? Let's just all focus our energy on removing this one bad word from our vocabulary. The second word, not really that you have to replace because you're going to use this word, but I'm talking about context, is I. Right? Again, nobody cares about you, meaning us. So statements about I think this. Okay, cool. You know, or I like this, I believe this. No, replace I with what? We. This magic word, because it's inclusive and it's also a little presumptive and it builds momentum. So for example, sitting down with a buyer or seller, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get you pre-approved, we're gonna set you up on a search, and when they hear we, they may think literally you mean like your team. However, their brain hears us. And so now we're gonna get you pre-approved, we're gonna go look at some houses, we're gonna write a contract. You're in it with them, you're a part of it. That shows that you have advocacy, you have skin in the game, and when you list a house, when we list your house, when we put it on the market, when we accept an offer, it's all we. I'm included in it as well. Again, no one of these things is going to be the magic bullet every time, but you will start to notice if you change this, your conversations become easier. And if you start with active listening, then your guide for how you help them becomes a lot easier because they're basically lining out the roadmap for you of what you need to do to serve them. So you're going to ask the important questions along the way, but every situation is different. So I also want to close today with two things. I'm going to pass this around. These are examples of trial closes. So trial closes are questions you ask mid-presentation to make sure that we're all on the same page. So examples of trial closes. So you're having a conversation with somebody. You're naturally going to trial close, not because you're getting assigned something, but before you move on to the next topic, you're going to trial close. Are you with me so far? I say that all the time. That's an example of a trial close. How does that sound? Would that benefit your situation? My favorite right here, I'm going to put a star next to it. During a listing presentation, especially if the seller is meeting with more than one person, at the end of my presentation, I'll always ask, is there anything that I didn't go over that I should have gone over, or is there anything that other people went over that I didn't go over, right? Because now I'm asking you, when you're comparing and contrasting, is there any information you're missing in your analysis? I'm not saying all of that, I'm just saying, is there anything look, I don't want to be here all day explaining everything that we do. We'll be here for 6 hours, but is there anything so far that I haven't explained that you wanted to talk about, or that maybe someone else covered that I haven't covered? Those are beautiful questions. The other thing that I want you to think about is something that Chris Voss, who's a former FBI negotiator, has written books about negotiation, is part of a trial close can be asking for a negative. So for example, you're talking about list price with a seller. You want to list it for 500, they want to list it for 525. Okay? Then you ask them the negative. Mr. Seller, are you against lowering the price to 500 after 2 weeks if we start at 525 and we don't get what we're looking for? Are you against that? You want the no. People at a negotiation or a sales table they want to say no. And so you ask them a question that by them saying no is actually a positive response. So, are you against this? Would you be opposed to? Right? It's a little Jedi mind trick. And you don't want to use it for every single one of your questions because you're just going to sound like an idiot. But if you sprinkle it in every once in a while, it can be very effective. Especially if you feel like you have someone's walls up and they aren't giving you anything, you ask for the no, and it will almost magically bring down some of their hesitation they have. Because they want to say no. They're looking for an opportunity to say no. So give it to them. They'll feel better. All right. So that's trial closes. Very important. Again, part of language. We have a bad word we're never going to say, which is budget. We're going to replace I with we. And then, to close this all out, we're going to talk about future pacing. I like to call this pre-objection handling. Maria, what are common fears that a first-time home buyer has when they're buying a house?
That they're not choosing the right house and the payment.
Yeah, Yeah, they have a fear that they're making a mistake.
Yeah.
They may fear that they're overpaying for the house, right? Every buyer, no one wants to overpay for a house. They may feel like, one example that I've run into a lot is first-time home buyer. They write an offer. They're excited to write the offer. The offer gets accepted, and then it's, oh crap, this is real, and they want to back out. It becomes too real. They want to get cold feet and back out. So, what you want to do is you want to pre-medicate them, right? You want to future pace, handle objections ahead of time. This is how you do it. Mr. First-time home buyer, just so you know, this is a very exciting process. Here's what may happen to you, and if it does, it's completely normal. After we get our offer accepted, you may wake up the next morning freaking out. That's perfectly normal. I'd actually be surprised if you didn't freak out. But we have our inspection period. That's our cooling off period. That's our time to learn everything there is to know about the house before moving forward. And if you're not warm and fuzzy with the condition of the home before the end of the inspection period, we just back out. No big deal. That's future pacing. This is letting people know ahead of time of a reaction they're gonna have that they're not aware they're gonna have, so that when it happens, they'll be like, okay, remember Richard told us this may happen and this is normal. Don't freak out. You want to make sure whatever reaction they have is normalized and accepted, because you don't want the buyer to be afraid to talk to you or to give you some BS reason because they don't want to admit that they woke up and had cold feet, because they're going to feel like they wasted your time. They're going to be embarrassed. So you have to normalize that, tell them what to expect, that it's going to be okay. Another one is Mr. Buyer. You may be worried that we're overpaying for this house because there were multiple offers and we had to bid above list price. That's a perfectly normal reaction to have. But rest assured, you're protected by the appraisal. And so there is no way that you're going to pay above appraisal for this house unless you really want to. You are protected. So you will not overpay. Oh, yeah, you're right. So that, again, is future pacing. And it's putting something in their mind ahead of time so that you defend against it. It's giving them basically a flu shot, because they're going to get the flu. So let me give you this flu shot now. That way when you're freaking out, because here's the thing. If you wait till they're in full freak out mode and then you try to calm them down, if they're too anxious, they may feel like they can't trust anything you say because you're just a salesperson and you want me to continue, and of course you want me to buy a house, right? So by future pacing, giving them permission to freak out, giving them permission to feel the way they feel, letting them know that's okay. If you don't like this house, I'll get you out of it. I'm on your side. That is really great. The other thing that builds an incredible amount of trust and rapport is talking somebody out of something that they want to do that is against your financial interest. So talking someone out of buying the house they want to buy because you recognize pitfalls that they don't see, you will win a fan for a life. And so when I sit down and talk to a buyer or any client, I'll tell them, look, there may be houses that we look at that I'm going to talk you out of buying. No one says that. I promise you, no less than 1% of realtors in the world say that. They'll say, hey, I might talk you out of doing this if I don't feel it's right. I'll let you know, I'll explain why. I have their best interest in mind. I've got their back. What does that do to their tension and resistance? Drops it all the way down. And so, yeah, that's what you have to make sure you're painting this picture of future pacing, letting them know what to expect, and being cool and calm about it. That is how you win people over and get them loyal to you. that has been part of my secret sauce in my career, is I've always kind of done that. You will win way more in the long run by breaking deals down than by putting someone into a house that they call you and they regret later. So that is future pacing, trial closes, but these are all things that you guys can work on. And I know I said in closing before, but this is something that works on you as well. So this neuro-linguistic programming, you can do this to yourself. And the way that you do this to yourself is by what I call taking a mental rep. So I want you to imagine having this conversation with somebody before you have this conversation. And by imagining it and walking through it, when it happens, it's gonna happen way slower because you've already been through this before in your mind and you'll be ready for it. We can do a whole 6-week seminar on mental reps, but before I have a conversation with someone that I think is gonna be tricky, I always do a mental rep of that conversation in my head, so that way I'm kind of ready for different outcomes. When I have a conversation with somebody, I always try to start with the end in mind. Now, don't mistake that for having an agenda in a conversation, but I want to finish this conversation having a better understanding of my client with next steps, right? That's our job, is to guide someone through the process. So that's it. That's our class today.